Hi there, my name is Maggie Wells. I'm the internship coordinator for the Career and Professional Success Office, also known as CaPS. And I'm here today to make this quick video about interviewing for success, how to leave a lasting impression. And I'm specifically going to focus in on virtual interviews, so online interviews and how to prepare for those, opposed to how you would prepare for an in-person interview. Before we get to the subject matter, if you hadn't heard of CaPS before, we are your one-stop career shop. Our job is to help students learn the skills to manage their careers while they're here with us at UNH and to take it beyond when they're an alumni. And we do that in a number of different ways. So we use the Wildcat way to professional success to teach our students the skills they're going to need to be career successful from here on out. The first thing is about building awareness. So building awareness of self, and like what kind of skills you have, the values you have, what you might want to do. Maybe you really like a subject matter, but you don't know what to do as a career in that subject, or maybe you have an idea of a career that you want, but you're not quite sure which major is the best complement for it. We're also here to help students learn how to build awareness of the industries that they choose to go into, because knowing your industry is how you're going to match both your skills and values with the skills and values needed of the industry of your choice. We're also here to teach students how to build their professional image. These are the things that most people think about when they think of a career center. So resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn profiles, interviewing prep, which we're going to do today, how to build your professional brand so that when you go and apply for positions, your application materials are on point. And those are used in order for you to build experience, because employers want to see experience. And experience can be inside the classroom with projects. It can be outside the classroom with faculty research. It can be part-time jobs, volunteer work, student org participation, or internships. And internships are incredibly important for you to find out more about your industry, pick up additional skills to put on your professional resume, and for you to be able to try on an experience before you graduate and officially buy it. So there's a number of different ways we do that. CaPS is available through Zoom meetings in Handshake. So if you log onto your Handshake account, you can make an appointment with a CaPS staff member at any point in time. You also have access to our 24/7, 365 days a week technology. So as a UNH student, you have access to Handshake for jobs and internships that get posted by employers who are actively recruiting, as well as finding recruitment events that employers are hosting. You can get your resume checked through VMock and get instant feedback. You can use Interview Stream to practice your interview skills and test out what it's like to do a virtual interview. You can also use Wildcat Connections, which is an exclusive networking platform connecting alumni with current UNH students. So you can ask them questions and find out more about industries or how an alumni got a specific career or job track that you yourself might be interested in. So lots of ways that you can get involved and career ready. So why are we here today? Well, we're here today because our country is in some uncertain times. In fact, our globe is in some uncertain times. And COVID-19 is changing up the way that we do things around career management. So I wanted to just give you a snapshot of the landscape. So the National Association of Colleges and Employers did a quick employer poll, and what they found that 50% of their employers are already moving to virtual or remote-based work. And over 25% will no longer recruit on campuses this spring. That doesn't mean that employers have stopped recruiting. It just means that they've changed up the way that they recruit. So instead of employers coming onto campus, they're now hosting virtual events. And instead of inviting people on into their place of employment to do an interview or coming to campus to do an on-campus interview, they're hosting virtual interviews, which is why it's so important for us to talk about the difference between a virtual interview and an in-person interview. 71% of our employers still plan to continue with internships. 23% are kind of in a wait and see mode, want to see what happens with this pandemic before they move forward with their own recruitment. And yes, the unemployment rate is rising across the nation, but we don't know what the long-term or really the short-term plans will be around the impacts of COVID-19. But the best thing that we can do now is prepare for any virtual or remote-based interactions with employers that we might have. So the interview is one that a lot of people get nervous about. I myself, even though I work in this field, still get a little nervous doing interviews, and I find that practice makes perfect. So here's a quick rundown of things that you can do. Remembering that an interview is a two-way street. It's not just about the employer finding out more information about you, it's also about you being prepared to find out more information about the employer. In order for you to accept a job, yes, an employer wants to hire you, but you also want to be hired. So use the interview not only as a way to put your best foot forward and leave a lasting impression, but also for you to find out more about the job and the culture of the company that you're going to be working at, because you want it to be a good fit for you, right? So it's elaborating and connecting your application materials. It's showing how you fit. It's communicating your interests and showing your passion for whichever job you're going for. And it's about learning about the position and to present your best self. So how do you do that? Well, the first and most important step is to prepare for the interview. You have to research your employer. Any job that you're going into to interview for, you need to know the mission and vision and values of that organization. Because how else are you supposed to make your skills and your values fit the skills and the values of the company that you're planning to work at if you don't know what those exactly are? What services or products does the company provide? What skills do you need to be successful? Reflect on yourself too, because to go into an interview, you have to know who you are. I usually say at least know your top 5 critical skills, right? The top 5 things that makes you the best fit for this job that you want to make absolute sure that the employer knows about. Not only do you want those top 5 skills, but you also want examples to show how you've used those skills already in your experiences. And then last but certainly not least is to practice. Practice with family, practice with friends, practice with interview stream, which you have access to do at any point in time. Or you can schedule a mock interview through Handshake and practice with one of the CaPS staff members as well. Practice makes perfect. Where do you find research? If you're wondering, how do I find out more about a company? Some companies' websites are fantastic and can provide you all the things that you want to see. Sometimes you have to dig a little on the website looking for their annual report or market news. Maybe they have a strategic plan that you can read to see where the company is moving forward with. A quick Google search of a company can show you any upcoming news, right? You can use LinkedIn. So looking at a company's profile on LinkedIn, as well as people who work currently at that company. What are the top 5 skills that you see as a theme going through all of the positions that you're looking at connected to that company? And then Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a really great place to research a company, especially around interviews, because a lot of applicants who have been in your interview your interviews experience right now will have gone onto Glassdoor and sort of give you notes of things that the employer asks about or what the interview structure looks like. So if you're looking for some inside information, Glassdoor is definitely the place you want to look at. Handshake as well. So students who have interned or gotten jobs at companies that have profiles on Handshake will also write peer reviews that you can read to find out more about the interview process, as well as what it's like to work at a company or intern at a company from a peer who's in a very similar position as you are. And then last but not least, network with people who work within that company, network with people who know that company so that you know all the information inside out and you're fully prepared to put your best foot forward. So how else is a virtual interview different from an in-person interview? It's really not all that different, except for the fact that if you're doing it through the web camera, you're obviously going to have a little less body language to pick up on, and there's some technical things that you're going to need to think about. But you still want to dress professionally, at least from the waist up, that you'll be on camera. You still want to greet the interviewer and make small talk as you would before. Instead of a handshake, you can give a quick hello with a wave, right, as a greeting, and then make some small talk. Small talk can be anything from the pandemic that's going on and how things are changing, from the weather to graduating to the changing of, spring into summer and looking forward to that. Small talk is important to sort of break the ice and set the tone. You don't want to just jump straight into the interview, whether you're in person or in a virtual space. Have a copy of your resume handy so that if they ask you a specific question about it, you can look down and reference it. or you yourself can reference it for them to look at on their end. Make sure you smile, okay? You don't want to look like you're in a mug shot or that you're scared. So make sure that you smile throughout your interview. Smiling also changes the tone of your voice and can show that you are enthusiastic and happy. So every once in a while, do a check to make sure you're smiling. Make eye contact with the camera, okay? So if you're looking over here or down or all around and out into space, it can look a little weird to the person on the other end of the camera. So if you want to make eye contact with your interviewer, as hard as it is, make sure that you're looking at your web camera as a way of showing that you are making eye contact with the person on the other end. Speak at an audible rate, not too quiet, but not too loud. You want to make sure that you're speaking at an appropriate amount. If you see the person leaning in like they're trying to understand you, it's probably because either you're talking too fast or it could be that you're talking too lightly. If they're leaning back or you see them going for the volume button, you might want to bring it down a little bit. Be mindful of your body language, okay? So if you're someone who speaks a lot with your hands, you might want to tuck them in or sit on them. You want to make sure you're sitting up straight, don't slouch, don't look like you're unenthused, right? Body language is just as important in the virtual space as it is in person-to-person space. So those are some quick things that might be different. Tips while in the virtual interview space, be prepared for the interview, okay? Just because you're in the remote based or on the computer does not mean that you can have a booklet of notes to flip through as you're doing your interview. I will say this, a few tasteful Post-its up across your computer of reminders of important things that you really want that employer to know and you want to make sure you don't forget about is completely okay. They're not going to see your Post-its, but you don't want anything that you're flipping through in order to answer questions. If they ask you something specific, people can hear you typing still in Zoom or in remote space, so don't try to Google it quick to answer the question, okay? Have a copy of your resume to reference. We mentioned that. Have a pen and a piece of paper in case you need something to write something down, okay? So if they ask you a two-part question, it can be a little hard to remember the second part, especially if you're a little nervous. So usually I'll make two little notes of what the question was. If I do feel like I'm rambling a little bit, I will check in with the employer and say, I'm sorry, I think you asked me a second part to that question. Do you mind repeating it? And then keep a glass of water nearby in case you need it. You are going to be talking a lot during an interview, so you can maybe need to drink a little bit. I also don't mind a glass of water because let's just say you get one of those questions that feels like it's stumping you or you weren't prepared for. A glass of water can buy you just a couple of seconds for you to take a sip. Think about your answer and then begin, okay? Don't take a sip of water after every single question. They're gonna catch on really quickly that that's what you're doing. Other tips to think about while you're in the virtual interview space, practice, test the equipment, sound, mic, practice with a friend, right? Send the link to the friend or the technology that you'll be using. Definitely make sure that you have speakers that are working and a microphone that is working. A lot of these technologies will allow you to do a mic and audio test. So make sure you do that so that the day of when you're already nervous, you're not fumbling over technology and things are set and ready to go. Make sure that you plan where you will be for your interview. Background is important. You don't want to be sitting in your bed. You don't want to be having posters or things in the background that might not be deemed appropriate. You don't want a whole lot of foot traffic back there as well, right? So make sure you let people know that you are actually doing an interview in your household so you don't have siblings running in the background, or in my case, sometimes my dad likes to walk through as I'm on a video call, or pets or animals. Cats love laptop tops. So make sure that you have set your space so that your distractions are at a minimum, noise is at a minimum, and that your background looks professional. Maybe just a blank wall or something with some tasteful decor in the background, whatever it happens to be. But like I said, make sure you avoid your bed. Don't sit in your bed with your headboard behind you as you're doing a professional interview, okay? So think about first impressions matter. Other things to think about while you're in the virtual space is your speech, which we talked about. Speak slowly and clearly. You will oftentimes be speaking faster than you realize. Be aware of saying etc. or I say okay a lot. You've probably already picked up on that in this video. So at the end of everything, I always say, okay. It's something that we like to say, be aware of your tics, right? Both your physical tics as well as your verbal tics. So that if you do have a nervous tic, you're aware of it to try to minimize it to the best of your ability. You're not going to be able to cut every and ah out of your speech, but try to keep them as much to a minimum as you can. Try not to interrupt the interviewer, okay? Look, I just did my tic of okay. Try not to interrupt the interviewer in that sense of if they go to speak, let them finish. Give a small pause after the end of you answering a question for them to pick up. The pause is always going to seem longer to you on your end than it is actually happening. For your dress, we already talked about you're going to dress the same way that you would if you were meeting face to face. And I will also say this about the dress as a sort of follow up to that is if you're wearing a hoodie or your pajama bottoms, sometimes when we're in hoodie and pajama bottom mode, we kind of have that same sort of vibe of being in our hoodies and our pajama bottoms, right? So when we dress a little bit more professionally, we start to feel a little bit more professionally and put together. So just be aware of the fact that our clothes sometimes can influence how we're feeling, and you want to make sure that you are dressed professionally as you would for any interview. If you want tips and tricks about how to dress for an interview, there's lots of resources on the CaPS website for people in figuring out what's professional dress. During the interview, look directly at the camera in order to make eye contact with the person. It's okay to not be staring at the camera unblinking for the whole time. You don't want to do that, but you do want to tastefully make eye contact as you would if the person was in the room with you. Try not to move around too much or have motion sickness by moving your computer or your laptop, okay? You want the person who's seeing you to not be distracted about the fact that you keep moving or that the table that you're at keeps moving because you're shaking like a leaf underneath it. Make sure you have good posture and that you look relaxed. You don't want to look so stiff that you're scared, right? No deer in the headlights type of moments. And then again, don't forget to smile. Smile and stay present. Try not to get distracted by noises in the background or other things that might be happening in your household. Chances are you're hearing things in your household that the interviewer is not hearing on their end. Last but not least, as some quick reminders, some of this might seem a little repetitive, your skills and your qualifications will help you land the interview, right? Your resume or your networking about your skills and your qualifications is what got you to the interview, but it's your personality at this point that will help get you the job, okay? So don't forget, it's not bragging, it's marketing. You're supposed to talk about yourself. You're supposed to talk about the best parts of yourself and the things that you're most proud of. If you've never done a professional interview before and you're not quite sure what kind of questions are going to be asked to you, make sure you check out either the CaPS website for suggested questions that could be asked so that you're preparing for those, do an interview stream and set up questions there that might be asked during an interview, or set up a Zoom mock interview with the CaPS staff. The best thing is being prepared to brag about yourself. You don't want to come off cocky. You do want to have some humbleness to yourself, but you don't want to discredit all the great things that you've done. You want them to like you. So smile and show your personality, but always remain professional. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to, make a quick joke if the opportunity presents itself, but you also want to know your audience. If the person who's interviewing you is a very serious person, then maybe it's not the time to make a joke about the pandemic. Okay. I speak from my own personal experience of someone who likes to joke about everything, and sometimes that can nip me in the bud. Last but not least, overcoming your nerves. Interviews are nerve-wracking, whether it's in person, on the phone, or remote-based through Skype or Zoom or in some sort of virtual space. It's okay to be nervous, just don't let your nerves sabotage your interview. You came to present your best self and to talk about your experiences and your skills. You know your stuff, and if you've prepared enough not to be robotic so that you answer everything in a scripted way, but in a way where you feel confident about the information you're giving, you can walk away from an interview feeling more confident than when you walked into it. Know your tics, physical and verbal. I am a big hand talker, so I have to remember to keep my hands down. When I get nervous, I fidget a lot. And so I will oftentimes wear a long necklace so that I can fidget with my necklace under the table with no one seeing. If I find myself getting very excited, I'll sit on my hands so they don't flail about. I'm also someone who will fix her hair a lot when she gets unconfident, right? When I get a question that I'm not feeling the best about, a lot of times I'll put my hands up around my neck or up to my hair. I have to know those tics in order to prevent myself from doing them when I'm doing an interview. And then address the elephant in the room. If this is your first time doing a virtual interview, say it. This is my first time doing a virtual interview. I'm so sorry if I seem a little nervous, because I am. It's okay to be nervous at an interview. You just don't want your nerves to sabotage the interview themselves. Last but not least, I want to make sure you remember some pretty basic things about at the end of the interview. These are places where students fall short a lot, and you really shouldn't, because this is the seal the deal moment. After the interview, you always want to send a follow-up email or a written thank you note within 24 hours of your interview. And in that thank you note, you don't want to just send the same generic thank you message. You want to mention something specific about the interview, whether it's something you learned, something that excited you, show some passion for the job. What you found out XYZ about this position, and it makes you even more excited for working for the company. Maybe they mentioned an article that you weren't up on that you then went and read and you could talk about. So make sure that when you write your thank you note, you put a special detail in there to show that you took something away from the interview that you're excited about. And you want to say thank you emails to everyone who was a part of your interview. So if you have multiple people who are interviewing you virtually, each one gets a thank you note. It's not just one thank you note to one person or one thank you email to multiple people attached to it. You want to be specific and thoughtful about how you make a thank you. A lot of times, even in higher ed, I will have staff who are hiring, directors who are hiring other staff who will say, they didn't send a thank you note, and I loved them in the interview, but it's just, I really need that thank you note to show that they understand that that's sort of the protocol of an interview. So don't forget that piece. You're not done as soon as you walk out of the interview or shut your computer off. You still have to follow up with that thank you note as that one extra added special detail. So these are all the tips and tricks I have for you as you go into the virtual interview spacing. I want to remind you that we are available for mock appointments on Handshake. You can make an appointment at any point in time to practice a virtual interview through Zoom so that you're feeling a little bit more comfortable and confident about it. Or if you've never done a professional interview before and you want to be asked some of the pretty standard questions like, tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Can you tell me about a time where you had to handle a conflict? Or tell me about a time that you failed, right? We'll practice all those questions with you. Don't have time to do a mock interview during, regular business hours? You still have access to Interview Stream 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for you to set up questions for your own interview. And I'll even say this, if you want to send the interview video to us later, we'll look it over and send you some specific feedback about your interview through Interview Stream. Okay, lots of resources for you to tap into. Go out there, Wildcats, and make the best first impression that you can. See you later.